Long before the Anunnaki Council ever descended to establish their first territorial cities in the fertile valleys of Mesopotamia, Earth belonged to an entirely different biological reality. Mainstream history textbooks claim this era was merely a chaotic, primeval wilderness of primitive dinosaurs, basic flora, and random evolutionary accidents. They teach us that human civilization rose linearly from the dirt, a clean and simple progression from hunter-gatherers to modern technological societies. But hidden within the uncatalogued, restricted basements of the world's oldest museums lies a collection of shattered cuneiform fragments that tells a radically different and deeply unsettling story. These suppressed records do not describe a barren wilderness waiting for the gods to cultivate it. Instead, they describe a dark, green earth that was already densely populated by highly intelligent, monstrous, and composite species. These were the original inhabitants of our planet, beings who possessed advanced biological and biomechanical frameworks that completely defy our current understanding of evolutionary biology. According to these forbidden translations, this pre-Anunnaki world was deliberately terraformed by an unknown, primordial intelligence. A group of entities who laid down the initial blueprints of life on Earth long before the Anunnaki as creators' narrative was artificially forced upon humanity. If you are fascinated by the hidden timelines of our planet that the mainstream system tries so hard to hide, take a single second right now to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for the ancestral shadows. We are uncovering the forbidden truths that academia refuses to acknowledge. And by joining our community early today, you ensure you never miss an unsealed archive. When the Anunnaki elite first arrived on this planet to secure its resources, they did not find an empty canvas. They found a deeply entrenched, highly resilient planetary ecosystem managed by these original composite species. The high-ranking Anunnaki commanders viewed these primordial inhabitants not as sacred life, but as an immediate, highly dangerous threat to their planned global labor colony. They launched a massive, coordinated planetary purge, utilizing advanced kinetic weaponry to clear the land. Yet, as the Great Flood was eventually weaponized to erase this primordial world completely, a select few of these ancient species did not perish in the waters. They had already calculated the cataclysm. They retreated into deep, subterranean, and underwater sanctuaries, surviving the absolute worst of the destruction inside highly specialized, submerged craft. They became the ghosts of the deluge, beings who quietly waited out the storm miles beneath the churning, violent oceans. Today, we unseal the forbidden records of a species that survived before the Great Flood ended everything. Before we dive deep into the specific structural blueprints of these ancient submersibles, I want to ask you a direct question to get your thoughts rolling in the comment section below. Do you believe it is mathematically possible that an advanced civilization inhabited this planet millions of years before us? Or do you think humanity is truly the apex of Earth's history? Drop your theories below right now, because we read every single comment to see where our community stands on these ancient mysteries. To understand how these original species managed to survive a cataclysm that completely reshaped the topography of the Earth, we must decode the true identity of the figures known in standard Babylonian and Sumerian texts as the Abgal, or the Seven Sages. Mainstream mythologists and academic historians teach that these 7 individuals were simply wise human priests sent by the god Enki to bring the basic arts of civilization, agriculture, and writing to early mankind. They present them as cultural heroes, mere men who walk the earth teaching primitive tribes how to dig canals and bake mud bricks. But the pre-dynastic tablets preserve a completely different, heavily suppressed reality that completely shatters this comfortable fairy tale. The Abgal were not human at all. The oldest cuneiform fragments describe them using the term oans, explicitly detailing entities with the literal bodies of fish but containing internal, highly advanced human features, complex respiratory systems, and a physical framework built specifically to endure extreme oceanic pressures. These entities did not descend from the heavens inside the fiery, atmospheric crafts utilized by Enlil's surface vanguard. They emerged directly from the deep Abzu, a region mainstream archaeology lazily translates as the sweet waters, but which the forbidden scripts identify as a massive, high-tech subterranean and deep-sea network situated far below the ocean floor. The apocryphal texts reveal that these 7 sages were actually the highly intellectual survivors of the pre-flood Earth. They were the biological caretakers of the Old World's global archive, possessing a complete technological library of mathematics, genetic engineering, and advanced anti-gravity mechanics that existed long before the Anunnaki arrived. When the weaponized floodwaters finally began to recede from the surface of the planet, the submerged craft of the Abgal breached the surface of what is now the Persian Gulf. Imagine the scene from the perspective of the primitive, traumatized human survivors who had managed to endure the cataclysm on the mountain peaks. They didn't see an ordinary crew of scientists. They saw literal gods rising directly out of the churning sea. The Abgal quickly realized that the Supreme Anunnaki Council in Nippur had executed a massive, global memory wipe on the human workforce, effectively resetting humanity back to a state of absolute, primitive ignorance, so they could be easily managed as mindless servants. In a direct act of defiance against Enlil's tyrannical lockdown, the sages began leaking the forbidden knowledge of the pre-flood world back into the newly reset human population. If you believe this hidden history needs to be shared with the world, hit the like button on this video right now. Your engagement is the only weapon we have to force the YouTube algorithm to push these suppressed truths past the institutional censorship walls. By liking this video, you're directly helping us break the matrix of hidden history. The Abgal taught humanity how to construct their new cities directly on top of the ancient, pre-flood megalithic foundations, intentionally encoding the true history of the cosmos into the sacred geometry of the temples. They were running a rogue, underground education system designed to spark human consciousness before the gods could permanently secure the mental chains. But this unauthorized operation did not go unnoticed. The high surveillance network of Nippur was already tracking the biological anomaly, preparing a swift and permanent retaliation against the sages who dared to illuminate the clay. The physical evidence of these pre-flood survivors is hidden in plain sight within one of the most controversial documents in archaeological history, the earliest, unedited versions of the Sumerian king list. The official versions displayed in public museums list early dynastic kings who allegedly ruled for astronomical periods, tens of thousands of years each before the flood came. Mainstream scholars laugh at these numbers, dismissing them as symbolic exaggerations or mythological fairy tales meant to give divine authority to early rulers. But the heavily suppressed, apocryphal fragments recovered from the ruins of Eridu record something far more complex and terrifying. They explicitly detail that these early pre-flood rulers were not individual flesh and blood kings in the human sense. They were vast, long-lived biological entities, composite creatures engineered through the sophisticated splicing of multiple genetic frameworks. The ancient historian Berossus, translating early Babylonian temple records that have since been conveniently lost to history, called these entities the bi-asma, the dual-natured things that completely dominated the dark, green era of the planet. These composite beings were specifically engineered by the pre-Anunnaki terraformers to operate as living, biological maintenance systems for the early Earth. They possessed cellular structures that were completely resilient to extreme radiation, severe atmospheric shifts, and immense gravitational pressures. They could survive in environments that would instantly liquefy human organs, walking through toxic volcanic valleys and swimming through highly acidic primordial oceans with absolute ease. They were the organic machinery of a self-sustaining planetary matrix. When Enlil's resource extraction forces first descended to claim the surface of the Earth, a brutal, undocumented war of attrition broke out across multiple continents. The Anunnaki heavy vanguard struggled immensely to eliminate these original, composite inhabitants. The tablets record that the bi-asma possessed a terrifying biological defense mechanism. Their cellular structure could regenerate almost instantly at a molecular level. If an Anunnaki energy weapon severed a limb or breached an organ, the creature's DNA would immediately deploy a high-density matrix of silver-like energetic filaments, knitting the flesh back together in a matter of seconds. This is the real, hidden reason why the Great Flood was ultimately authorized by the High Assembly of Nippur. It was never about punishing human sin or cleansing the moral fabric of mankind. That was the cover story written by the victorious priesthood. The flood was a calculated, military-grade planetary reset button. It was the only weapon large enough to completely drown and suffocate the unyielding, self-regenerating composite ecosystem of the pre-flood masters. If these historical records are so detailed and monumental, we have to ask ourselves the most critical question of all. Why has this narrative been completely erased from modern academic institutions? Why are we taught about primitive stone tools instead of advanced pre-flood biology? The answer lies in a highly structured, multi-generational campaign of historical editing launched by the later Anunnaki temple priests. To guarantee absolute, unquestioning obedience from the newly engineered human labor force after the flood, the priesthood had to build a clean, highly controlled mythology. They had to present the Anunnaki elite as the absolute alpha and omega of existence, the sole creators of the universe, the stars, and the human form. Any tablet, scroll, or oral tradition that recorded the existence of the advanced pre-flood species or the mysterious terraformers who preceded the gods was declared high treason against the state. The temple guards systematically raided early libraries, smashing clay records and melting down bronze plates that contained the true, complex history of the old world. The only tablets that managed to survive this brutal purge were those intentionally stolen and buried deep within underground vaults by secret factions of human scribes who remained completely loyal to the teachings of the Abgal sages. These scribes risked their lives to preserve the forbidden records, sealing them in resin-coated pottery and bronze canisters, hiding them in the deep desert caves of the Near East where they slept undisturbed for thousands of years. These are the exact texts that alternative epigraphers and independent linguists have been quietly recovering and translating over the last century. When you stitch these fragmented pieces back together, they reveal a massive flaw in the Anunnaki's grand plan. The Great Flood did not achieve the total biological purification that Enlil's radical faction had intended. The old world did not die completely beneath the waves. Its architects and its highly resilient composite species simply changed their physical coordinates. They retreated into the deepest, most inaccessible trenches of the global ocean, moving their entire civilization into the suboceanic crust where no surface weapon could ever reach them. Before we move into the next act to reveal where these entities are operating today and how they are interacting with modern naval technology, take a moment right now to leave a comment with the word vigilant if you are still locked into this deep dive. It lets us know who the true seekers are in our audience, and it directly signals the system that this video is driving massive retention. What does this mean for our modern reality? If these pre-flood species survive the cataclysm and remain deep within the ocean trenches, what evidence do we have of their presence today? The truth is, the evidence is breaking through the surface every single day, but it is routinely reclassified under the banner of national security. Modern military sonar and deep-sea naval vessels frequently encounter anomalies that the global defense systems officially classify as USOs, unidentified submerged objects. These are not rare, isolated incidents. Internal naval logs from the world's superpowers reveal that these submerged craft routinely travel beneath the waves at speeds exceeding hundreds of knots per hour, executing sharp maneuvers that should instantly crush any material known to modern metallurgy. The suppressed Sumerian records suggest a reality that is far more fascinating than a standard alien invasion from deep space. These highly advanced submersibles are not originating from another star system. They're the automated patrol systems and living crafts of the pre-flood terraformers. They are the original property owners of this planet. They have remained deep within the absolute darkest trenches of the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans for millennia, completely insulated from the surface world's political revolutions, world wars, and societal shifts. They operate within an entirely different energetic paradigm, utilizing localized anti-gravitational fields to completely eliminate water resistance around their hulls, allowing them to glide through the ocean depths like a hot knife through wax. The black tablets indicate that during the late stages of the post-flood reconstruction era, the scientist god Enki negotiated a highly complex, binding geographic treaty with these deep-sea survivors. The parameters of the pact were strict. The pre-flood survivors would maintain absolute sovereignty over the deep oceans and the subcrustal networks of the Abzu, while the Anunnaki and their human surrogates would manage the surface continents. For thousands of years, this boundary line was held perfectly. But in our modern era, humanity's aggressive industrial expansion has completely disrupted the equilibrium. Our deep-sea commercial oil drilling, nuclear submarine testing, and high-frequency active sonar arrays are now directly breaching their long-established exclusion zones. We are violently rattling the cage of an ancient, superior intelligence. The naval encounters recorded in recent years are not random curiosities. They are deliberate, tactical shows of force by the deep-sea masters. They are signaling to the surface establishment that the ancient treaty negotiated by Enki is reaching its absolute expiration date. The forbidden Sumerian records do not end with a historical summary. They leave future human generations with a definitive, chilling warning regarding the closing of the grand cosmic cycle. The texts state explicitly that the pre-flood survivors will not remain confined to the deep ocean trenches indefinitely. The ancient calendar systems embedded within the cuneiform symbols indicate that their dormancy is entirely tied to the energetic output and stability of the surface world. When humanity's surface civilization becomes too geopolitically volatile or approaches a dangerous threshold of planetary or ecological destruction, the ancient submersibles of the Abgal are programmed to breach the surface once again in massive numbers. They are the planetary immune system. When the surface infection becomes critical, the immune response triggers automatically. They will not return as benevolent saviors to solve our political disputes or hand us free energy. They will return to reset the global parameters, reclaiming the surface management from a species that has forgotten its true place in the cosmic hierarchy. The history we are taught in school is a carefully curated, heavily sanitized illusion designed to keep us looking down at our tools, completely blind to the ancient architectural matrix that exists right beneath our feet and under our waves. We are not the first advanced civilization to build empires on this dirt, and if the ancient clay of Eridu is correct, we will certainly not be the last. The true masters of the earth have never left. They are listening, they are monitoring, and they are waiting right beneath the waves for the cycle to close. If you are ready to completely disconnect from the artificial frequencies of mainstream distraction and venture even deeper into the forbidden archives of our lost origins, click the video that is appearing on your screen right now. That next deep dive will reveal the hidden underground networks that connect the Sumerian ziggurats directly to the deep Abzu. Do not let the system dictate your understanding of reality. Click the video on screen now, subscribe to the Ancestral Shadows, protect your internal frequency, and above all else, stay vigilant.